Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have a good one for you, as always. On the show today, we give you the latest on all things Gaza. And I was curious. I looked at the kind of mainstream media news pages, New York Times, Washington Post, and they had some Gaza coverage up. They had some, Israel-Hamas war coverage up. But none of them talked about the fact that Israel just stormed Shifa Hospital for the fourth time. It just, again, killing and wounding a number of people. This continued psychological, in addition to just blatant just war crimes, to playing games with the Gazan people, taking away any place of safety for them. We will give you all the details on that and more of the day of news from the besieged Gaza Strip. Also, a bigger profile is out on Joe Biden. Peter, Nicholas, Courtney Cube, and Carol E. Lee have some interesting stuff about how Biden is not so happy behind the scenes and starting to realize that he's not in a very good shape, and the polls may not come back to, the way he wants them to be. Finally, a good and important piece by Ben Burgess, giving us the latest on all things Trump in his dangerous rhetoric about dehumanization of migrants. And I'm trying to convince even the most, anti-Trump hysterical person that always thinks the liberals are kind of making it too big a deal of it, that this really does matter. It is a very important situation. And that, because, that is a position that I have been very prone to at times. And we're going to put it all kind of in the political context and put it all in the bigger picture, moral context. Also give you a look at some of Trump's comments on abortion real quick as well. So, all right, we don't not have much time, so we got to get right into it. In the early hours of Monday morning, Israel forces stormed Shifa Hospital in northern Gaza with tanks and heavy gunfire. There have already been a number of martyrs and wounded in the ongoing Israeli onslaught, which began around 2 a.m. Gaza's Ministry of Health said that around 30,000 people, including displaced civilians, wounded patients, and medical staff, are trapped inside the complex. Sniper bullets and quadcopters target anybody who tries to move. A fire also broke out at the entrance to the hospital, and cases of suffocation occurred among those displaced women and children inside. Just absolutely, beyond horrific stuff. And the only reason I feel like there isn't just, an absolute uproar, an absolute just like rebellion about the fact that we are doing this to these people is that, again, as I said, just not being covered in the news. If you ask many Americans, 99.9% of Americans aren't going to know that Israel is doing this in a specific way right now, striking a hospital yet again, and all the hospitals that they continue to strike and continue to besiege. And, we kind of missed the TikTok story a little bit over the Friday show that we didn't do, but I think it is, also shows in a very big, clear, obvious way. It also shows that there is not going to be, that is one key source of news that a lot of people rely on. They really do see TikTok as a major source of news for this. And, it's not my personal number one source of news, although, I do see some stuff related to the Palestinians, but it's started to phase off. It really has, and it's a very, very disturbing situation because not everyone, unfortunately, is reading Mondo Weiss, is listening to Newsflash. Though, please do tell your friends, spread the word about this podcast. It would definitely be highly appreciated. But yeah, so apparently the idea is that there's senior terrorists that have regrouped inside the Shifa Hospital are using it to command attacks against Israel, which is very hard to imagine because we've seen very limited strikes as they continue, into Israel. Although we are seeing some strikes against Hamas striking Israel for a long time into this conflict, we're seeing less and less of that now as they really do start to get hit more and more. We are seeing again not many of those strikes, not many of those kind of red triangle videos really either. Although I believe there's one about a week or so ago. The Israeli military, again, just completely made up BS, claims that have never shown any, evidence of being true, have never shown any hint of being true, just in the same way that they, talked about how they fired on aid seekers, and that was due to the, supposedly hordes of animalistic, human animals, as their defense minister called them, Gazans just trampling the situation. So really, really awful stuff. Trampling the trucks and just that complete lie. How many other complete lies, from the Al-Akhli hospital bombing on out, and about the, command centers inside Al-Shifa hospital. Like, how many lies, will they be able to just tell unashamedly? And we know the answer. It feels stupid to keep asking these questions again, because we know the answer, and it is just essentially unlimited. It is really, really rough. In Arabic, it's kind of interesting to see the kind of the contrast between the Arabic and the Hebrew messaging in the Israeli military messaging. The Arabic and the English messaging. Hagari added in his English video statement that the Israeli military would be conducting a humanitarian effort during the planned assault, providing food and water. At the same time, he emphasized there is no obligation for patients and medical staff to evacuate the hospital. And again, just chill, hang out while we blow it up. And, just do whatever we want, we're conducting a precise operation. And again, there's no real way of telling, how many people are killed, what exactly the Israeli army did. There's no eyes, there's no witnesses, there's no journalists. I mean, they just arrested an Al Jazeera Arabic correspondent yesterday. So, again, more journalists have been killed in record numbers, arrested, internet's been cut off. So, again, there's no real even way to say what they're doing is what they actually did. Let alone, targeting the terrorists. They could have gone through the whole hospital for all we know. Like, we just know so little about the situation, so it's very, very hard to, properly stay in tune. But in the Arabic video here, Israeli military spokesman Avikai Adere called on Palestinians to evacuate the hospital and its surrounding area on X. In order to maintain your security, you must immediately evacuate the area to the west, and then cross Rashid Street to the south, to the humanitarian area in Al-Mawasi. So Al-Mawasi apparently is a humanitarian zone in the western Khan Yunis, severely overcrowded strip of land in the west of the Gaza Strip, serving as one of Gaza's few designated safe areas, despite, surprise, surprise, being subjected to Israeli fire. According to Gaza-based Al Jazeera correspondent Hani Mahmoud, leaflets dropped by the Israeli military told people inside Al-Shifa hospital, its vicinity, and the entire residential blocks surrounding the medical complex to evacuate immediately. So, again, just a complete lie to the English-speaking world as they continue to sanitize everything. People are caught up about whether to leave and to trust statements or stay where they are. We're talking about thousands of Palestinians who have been sheltering inside the complex since the start of the war. Again, it's just... no safe zone continuously, as we see, in Gaza at this point. The Times of Israel reports the army has taken control of Al-Shifa and detained 80 people since the most recent attack began, with absolutely no real evidence, towards these people, just, messing around with people's lives, supposed Hamas terrorists based on no evidence. We've seen all this, again, it's really shocking how little evidence they've given, how little justification of, the people they've been targeting has actually panned out. And secondly, how little evidence they've given for anyone to be been able to check if it's panned out. Again, the theme here is just no accountability and no even beginning to think they're going to have any accountability. In a new report, UK charity Oxfam has accused Israel of actively hindering aid operations in Gaza, defying orders from the International Court of Justice to prevent the genocide in the besieged Palestinian enclave. The Oxfam outlined 7 ways Israel prevents delivery of aid, including only by opening 2 crossings into Gaza, imposing a dysfunctional inspection system that keeps supplies held up, and cracking down on humanitarian missions. The ICJ order should have shocked Israel leaders to change course, but since then, conditions in Gaza have actually worsened, Sally Abi Khalil, Oxfam's Middle East and North Africa director, said. Again, so the stuff that we kind of really always knew about this, the ICJ ruling, was it's good to get it on paper, it's good to have it clarified, but as long as there's no muscle behind this decision, and the muscle here comes from, unfortunately, the group that controls all, major international institutions at the moment, which in their effectiveness and their ability to impose power, which is the U.S. government, and they seem to have no interest in changing course. And Joe Biden is the left-wing person on this. It's just really, really awful. Catherine Russell, the executive director of the UN's Children Agency, says acute malnutrition is when the body starts to consume itself as it has nothing else. It's a painful, painful death for children. I've been in wards where babies are suffering from malnutrition. The whole ward is absolutely quiet because the babies don't even have the energy to cry. So just Let that sink in there for a second. Absolutely horrific situation. On Sunday evening, Al Jazeera cameras captured a convoy of 19 aid trucks entering the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. The trucks were carrying flour, rice, and other foodstuffs on their way to a UNRWA distribution center. The delivery marks the first convoy to travel from the south to the north of Gaza without incident in 4 months. 4 months, people. It's just, again, absolutely insane. No one being shot. No, people trying to get to the truck and not being able to get to the truck. Because, again, there's been 400 people shot trying to receive aid. 400 people. It's just like any one of these crimes would be an absolutely discrediting event for every other country. We've seen about, 60 crimes, it feels like, related to, on the level of like the Bucha massacre that Putin committed in Ukraine. And what is the response? It's nothing. It's, Israel has the right to defend itself. Again, it's just these people are, cannot be broken. They cannot be made to see reason. They cannot be broken out of their fervor for Israel unless, something really, really drastic happens in the political world. Between mid-March and mid-July, the most likely scenario under the assumption of an escalation of the conflict, including a ground offensive in Rafah, half the population of the Gaza Strip, 1.1 million people, is expected to face catastrophic conditions, or according to the IPC Phase 5, the most severe level in the acute food insecurity scale. This is an increase of 530,000 people, or 92% compared to the previous analysis. The IPC has also said that Gaza will likely face a risk of famine in July 2024 in the event of a worst-case scenario. And it's kind of hard to see how, just for the people of Gaza, for the people of Palestine since 1948, it, will be anything other than the worst-case scenario, which is still, kind of continuing apace, I think it's fair to say. The Netanyahu administration shows no intention of ending its war on Gaza anytime soon, despite a growing choir of voices, including Israeli allies, calling for the end of the ongoing assault, including military chief of staff Herzi Halevi. He said in a press statement that much has been achieved during a multi-front and complex war, but it will take time to achieve more, according to Al Jazeera, saying, quote, "We still have a long way to go." It seems like they have, precisely, 1.5 million people to go before their war goals are achieved, because as they, continue to view every single person in Gaza as a terrorist, as we have seen, especially every, any man or any just male person, no matter what age they are, could be a child. Halevi also said that our army continues to plan operations in areas where we have not yet operated, in reference to Rafah in southern Gaza, where 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering. The military is preparing for offenses in additional areas, and together with the political echelon, we will decide on the timing and the appropriate conditions. We are determined to act wherever Hamas is building its strength. It is wrong to leave Hamas brigades and Hamas battalions functioning. Again, so in this kind of goes to the ceasefire situation. We've seen continued concessions from Hamas, continued, indications to act in goodwill, despite the, really unprecedented military success that they've been having since October 7th in defending themselves from the Israeli onslaught, which, it's not major, but it's way better than anyone by any means. I don't want to give people the idea that they're storming through all of Israel, just killing all the IDF soldiers, and no one's ever heard anything about it. But we've seen through the red dot videos, through the continued strikes, with the limited rockets that they have, and I think it's really important that everyone understand how weak those rockets actually are. But through their continued, doing of those actions, I think it's pretty clear that they have things have gone better for them than anybody really expected that was possible. But yet they still have been the ones to, show the goodwill, which really kind of contradicts the general narrative of them, and what they have, and really some of the atrocities that they committed on October 7th. But I think it is very, very clear for them to just come out, and it's good to see who is coming out, who is trying to make concessions, who is trying to make an end to this war, despite the massive amounts of spin on the other side. Israel has rejected ceasefire deal after ceasefire deal, hostage exchange after hostage exchange, because what does it keep coming back to? They want to keep pushing. They don't want to stop until they say they can stop, which is a complete destruction of all of Gazan society to any recognizable degree. I think that's what their end game is, and I think their targeting of various civil societies has shown it. Their genocidal rhetoric has shown it, and the fact that they refuse to agree to a deal where they stop the fighting and all the hostages are returned, which is supposedly what they want in the first place. Former military commander Yitzhak Brick said Israel had lost its war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. You can't lie to many people for a long time, Yitzhak Brick said in an article in Israel's Mariv newspaper, as reported by Al Jazeera. What is happening in the Gaza Strip against Hezbollah and Lebanon will blow up in our faces sooner or later. Brick said the Israel home front is not prepared for a regional war, which will be thousands of times more difficult and serious than the war in the Gaza Strip. So if he's right, and it does plan to be a regional war in Lebanon as well, that would be pretty catastrophic, but, they are still chugging away, committing crimes as well. All right, we're going to go to our next big story, and that is with Joe Biden. But first, we have this message. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening and supporting Newsflash. We now have a brand new way for you to be heard if you want, whether a text message or a audio message. Please, no video messages. I really just do not think that's necessary. We have a new feedback box open for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially open. SWRN702@gmail.com. Send a text message, send a voice message of no more than 30 seconds via the voice memos function. Either of those two options, and we will 100%, not going to find this guarantee anywhere else. We're going to play it on the show, listen to what you have to say, and it literally could be about anything. Well, if it's inappropriate, we won't play it, but it could be about anything. Thank you so much. This is my thank you to all the listeners who have stuck out with us and want to have their own voice in the show. SWRN702@gmail.com is the address. All right, so we are, we've got a pretty good one for you, I would say, in the moment at NBC News, breaking down essentially what is going on in this election for Joe Biden. And folks, he is not happy. Peter Nicholas, Courtney Cube, and Carol E. Lee. In a private meeting at the White House in January, allies of the president had just told him that his poll numbers in Michigan and Georgia had dropped over his handling of the war in Israel, between Israel and Hamas. Both are battleground states he narrowly won 4 years ago, and he can't afford any backsliding if he is once again ready to defeat Donald Trump. He began to shout and swear, according to a lawmaker familiar with the meeting, because he believed he had done what was right despite the political fallout. He told the group, according to the lawmaker. So again, just he is doing this. I think it's fair to say this is back in January. He is well aware of the kind of political fallout that he's receiving and just doesn't care. He is, and this is the amazing thing. It's not some broader political pressure. It's not some any other incentive on Joe Biden. He could change course. He could in any way take any more mitigating steps to stop what Israel is doing, instead of just taking the strategy of, again, it's not a conciliatory strategy to the Palestinians. It's a strategy that is only conciliatory to bullshitting the American public, because it is a strategy of, how can we buy you some time, Israel? That's where they start at. How many, concerned statements, how many, angry letters do we need to write? How many concerned comments do we need to make on TV, while really essentially enabling you to do whatever you want in prosecuting this war, which is what their strategy has pretty much inarguably been ever since the start of this. And we keep saying, oh, it's time for a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. Now that this language has kind of been co-opted in the new year, as we understand now the difference between an immediate ceasefire, or humanitarian pause, or just take a 2-week break and then go back to the genocide. as we start to see that difference, is becoming more clear that he can't, kind of talk his way out of this. For months, Democrats have watched the 2024 campaign unfold with rising alarm as the sitting president struggles to gain ground against his defeated predecessor. Frustrations rippling through the party have reached to the top, with Biden's at times second-guessing his travel decisions and communication strategies that have left much of the electorate clueless about his record. Interviews with nearly 20 lawmakers, present and past, administration officials, and Biden allies show. A starting gun for the general election campaign fired last week as Biden wrapped up his Democratic nomination, yet he is still searching for ways to impress upon voters he deserves a second term by dint of policy achievements that eluded past presidents. And again, given the situation, and given, excluding the Gaza situation, and maybe had the economy been a little bit better, I think Biden would be soaring to re-election. And also, by the way, given the fact that he's right now is 82 fucking years old, he would be soaring to re-election with his record that he has. Is better than, if you look at take it in a narrow lens, you take exclude Gaza, which is I'm to be 100% clear, in my opinion, is absolutely and utterly, completely disqualifying. Exclude some of the really, just bad, ill-advised foreign policies done, on Iran. Exclude some of the things that he said about the border that make him sound exactly like Trump. The kind of domestic policy record, and the handling of the economy and the kind of soft landing as it's getting a little bit bumpy. Inflation hovering at 3.2%, not quite going down to 2%. But with the jobs market staying relatively intact, and kind of guiding people through the pandemic in a way that could have gone really a lot worse in some of the major bills that he's been able to pass, although it took really forever to get him to pass, and just an inability to use political power until it was all the good stuff, the really transformative stuff had gone, and the stuff that we actually need had gone. And also, by the way, creating a COVID welfare state and destroying it 2 years later. With all those caveats, I think you would be in a much better position. But all those caveats are there. It is really a rough situation. So history suggests that it'll be tough for Biden to recover. Biden's 38% approval rating at this stage is lower than that of the last three presidents who went on to lose re-election, with Trump at 48, George Bush at 39, H.W. Bush at 39, and Carter at 43, according to Gallup survey data. Biden long believed he isn't getting sufficient credit for an economy that created 15 million new jobs. Again, it's just such a loser mindset. It's just like you can't be jealous, or you can't be mad at the electorate for you got to convince them. It's like that's not how politics works. People aren't supposed to chalk every single good thing that they get that, oh, by the way, they actually deserved. They're not supposed to, and they shouldn't have to chalk everything with that up to Joe Biden and the government policies. During internal discussions, he'll press aides about which part of his record to highlight in different states, said a second person familiar with the matter. Surrounded by protective aides who want to minimize his chances of a flub, the 81-year-old president has chafed at restraints that he sees as counter to his natural instincts as a retail politician, a third person familiar with internal discussions said. He has felt cocooned at times and eager to get out more, meet voters face-to-face, and take the fight directly to Trump, said the third person, and a fourth also familiar with the matter, who, like others, whatever, blah, 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 anonymity. So there are also some within his party are losing patience with him. Biden stood up in front of the world and said, "I'm ready. I'm the guy who can take down Donald Trump," said Adam Smith of Washington. So goddamn well he better do it. He goddamn well better do it. We don't have time for him to be worried about whether or not people are saying things right or the poll numbers are where they should be. I want focused energy and not defensive anger. I think that's, a very fair take, kind of going to this kind of loser mindset of what I said. Why don't they like me? Why don't they? It's just come on. Just at least he does kind of have some of the better political instincts than his aides, because if he just stays there cocooned, I feel like he's really not going to have any good shot. But also, if he goes out there, he could have just really horrific flubs that remind people of his age, which was also probably one of the biggest reasons why they're not voting for him. So again, it's a really tough situation for Biden at this point. And again, why so many people on the left, including myself, have said from the start he's not going to be a good person to replace or go against Donald Trump. He wasn't really the last time, and he also is going to be 10 times worse this time. So it's like. It's just like it's a really rough situation. So Biden has apparently on occasion directed some of his ire at tight-knit senior staff. Given the success he has had in passing consequential bills and improving the economy, Biden was irritated that his message wasn't sinking in with the broader electorate, sources said. And again, so it's like, did he really? Was it all him who was doing that stuff in terms of passing, the COVID relief bills? I believe it was like 2 bills, and then the CHIPS Act or whatever. Like, it's such an arrogant, such a like entitled person that I feel like people just don't really give a lot of credit for him. Just a baby as well. A memo that campaign manager Julie Chavez Rodriguez sat out in December suggests that it was always the plan for Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to start ramping up the campaign travel earlier this year, something that is now happening. Biden's traveled to Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania since the State of the Union, and he will be heading to Nevada and Arizona earlier this week. Biden's aides see Trump as eminently beatable and a deeply flawed opponent, but also, so is it, again, like most elections, the question is going to be who has more flaws, not who is better. So Trump appears to have little interest in attracting voters beyond his most faithful fan base, because that's what he knows he needs to do to win. We know he lost in 2020. In order to win, he's got to expand his base of voters to find new people to be with him, and that is not something he's shown that he's really focused on. And again, it doesn't seem to matter. He wasn't trying to do that in 2016. He wasn't trying to do that in 2020. He is Trump. He is who he is. He'll have that 36 to 44% approval rating no matter what. It's all down to how, a certain amount of people in the middle feel about Trump versus how they feel about Joe Biden. And in 2020, they thought that Joe Biden would be a calm, stable hand in the midst of chaotic situation, and the crises that we've seen and we thought were inherent to the Trump administration have now completely come back and almost metastasized under the Joe Biden administration. Also, people's paychecks aren't going as far as they used to. People's just inflation has been an incredibly hard situation that people are still feeling the pain of and really associate with Joe Biden, even if they feel the pain less now. And, again, wages have gone up in the lower and middle class, not really going up. So it's like this sense of stability, the sense of age, the sense of competence. This is turning, not those swing voters like, this kind of fictitious, independent swing voter who's really tuned into politics but just wants to see what side's better on the day. No, it's the people who just go the most based on vibes, follow politics the least, just see where they think the country is, kind of stick their figure in the wind. Those are the people that Trump needs to win, and those are the people who are increasingly, for a wide variety of reasons that I just listed, are more repulsed by Biden. So at times Biden gets suggestions that conflict with one another. Some advisors have told him he should walk faster out of concern that his gait feeds impressions that he's too old. Again, they're thinking about his walk. I mean, just let the man walk at this point. And yet the White House is sufficiently worried about him tripping that he has taken to boarding a plane on a shorter staircase through the belly of the plane, forgoing the iconic image of the president waving from the main doorway high above the tarmac. He's probably a little mad at himself for not being more forceful with the staff, a person familiar with the internal discussion said. Something about this piece is almost giving me the idea that Biden has better political instincts than his staff, which is like, really, if you're going to someone who is that much mental decay due to age, and he still has better political instincts than you, that is pretty rough. Just let the dude walk up the stairs. The man's been successful for decades in Congress and became a vice president and president, said a fifth person who formerly served in the Biden administration. If you try to change the person, you're making a mistake. Let the president go out there and do his thing. So Andre Dickens, Democratic mayor of Atlanta, said that Trump's bluster tends to soak up the attention, but Biden's record is actually making city streets safer. He cited spending bills that enabled his city to pay retention bonuses to police officers and underwrite youth programs that help curb crime. Letting voters know that is the job of the mayor and county leaders who have benefited from the Biden administration policies, he added, but it's also, the job of the freaking president. Again, it's just kind of a joke at this point, the just incompetence and the dysfunction throughout the White House. And it'd be interesting to see if, at some point we see, all right, Jack, I'm getting back in charge here. And he gets, back on the campaign trail. He's going to get an earful on it, but at least he will be slightly more in tune with the reality of the situation. Definitely going to be interesting to follow. Meanwhile, we have Donald Trump on abortion and also, the migrant situation. We'll get to that in a second, but just want to update you quick on what he said to Howard Kurtz on abortion, essentially coming out a 16-week ban. Politically, I think this is going to be, again, it all depends on the narrative war. It all depends if people like Joe Biden actually start messaging right on this and, painting this what it is, which is, just the continual, kind of radical turn of the Republican Party on abortion, trying to take away rights, the party of extreme social conservatism, watching you every moment of the day, trying to control exactly what happens inside your, all that stuff, all the same stuff that they kind of did around 2022. Trump and the Republicans, just kind of extreme Handmaid's Tale type party. Or if Trump gets kind of the messaging jump, I guess, I think, 16 weeks, I feel like it just sounds low. People, put that to their own lives. That's what, like 4 months, it's like a very, it's 4 months, right? Yeah, I'm not going absolutely crazy. It's been kind of a long day. I apologize. But, it has been, it's going to be a really, really kind of important thing for them to kind of, spin that on either on the Biden side as a kind of continued trend for Trump, and the Republicans as being, the Handmaid's Tale party, which is going to be, I think, probably easier to do. And then if Trump comes out and the Republicans say, this is a standard solution we could put in for everyone, 16 weeks, this is the way it should be, and they don't go anywhere further than that, and start also, I think, comparing it to Europe. That's like a particularly effective thing for them to do, because I think people kind of associate Europe with just like, left-wing craziness, in a lot of places. So if they're at 16 weeks, it must be okay. I think that could be kind of cut through a little bit, but in the political scene, 16 weeks just absolutely ridiculous. And again, in the broader moral scene, the 16 weeks is just absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. It's just it's something that puts way too much unnecessary stress on the women in these really, really tough situations. And again, it's not like the late-term, drastic 8-9 month abortions are a very common thing. They happen in I think 7% of the time is what it is when in the Roe era, and it's mostly because of some sort of health emergency or something very legitimate like that. But yeah, 16 weeks is going to be, it's just such a unnecessary, cruel, ideological thing that just does not take the best methods of, or take the most concern in women's health in mind. But politically, of course, it's kind of too early to tell because it all comes down to how they can spin it. But I would definitely say Trump has the uphill battle in trying to spin, after all the things the Republican Party has done, trying to spin this 16-week ban as normal, as okay, as not absolutely crazy. So let's get into his comments about migrants. In a speech last Saturday in Ohio, Donald Trump used the word bloodbath. This was played up in the initial media coverage of the speech. The New York Times, for example, ran the story under the headline, Trump says some migrants are, quote, not people, and predicts a bloodbath, unquote, if he loses. The Joe Biden-Kamala Harris campaign upped the ante, suggesting that Trump had not only predicted but threatened such violence. Trump's defenders pointed out that he'd been talking in the context of the auto industry when he used the word, and that in context, it's plausible that what he meant was that the competition from Chinese companies building factories in Mexico would lead to a bloodbath for the industry. There was a feeding frenzy about this alleged misrepresentation, ranging from YouTube supercuts of Trump-hating liberals using the word in similarly innocuous context to a highbrow article by Matthew Schmitz in Comeback magazine defending the substance of Trump's views on trade. By the end of Sunday night, the bloodbath hoax was the story on right-wing Twitter. The right's view of the matter wasn't entirely wrong, although Trump's wording left more ambiguity than his defenders suggest. He also muttered something about how the bloodbath for the industry would be the least of it, because there would also be a bloodbath for the country, which is, doesn't sound good. But Trump was really talking about the auto industry both immediately before and immediately after he used the word. The problem is, that isn't all he said. Take away the bloodbath bit, and you still have chillingly dehumanizing rhetoric about immigrants. Here's the quote. If I had prisons that were teeming with MS-13 and all sorts of people that they've got to take care of for the next 50 years, right? Young people, they're in jail for years. If you call them people, it's like, Jesus Christ. I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion. But I'm allowed to say that because the radical left says, I'm not allowed to say that, sorry, because the radical left says that's a terrible thing to say. They say you have to vote against him because did you hear what he said about humanity? I've seen the humanity and the humanity. These are bad. These are animals. Okay. So again, it's kind of a little, hard to read there with the classic Trump syntax, but like, oh my God, and again, it's not just like, I can hear the people saying, oh, he's only, do you really think MS-13 gang members are not animals? You don't think they're really bad people? It's like, hello, does this not sound familiar to the situation that we've just seen in Israel? They'll call, Hamas human animals, but sometimes they'll literally just slip and call all of Gaza human animals because that's what they really mean. They are talking about MS-13 and trying to get you to think just in the same way that Israel is trying to make everyone think that everyone in Gaza is, MS-13. They want you to think that every brown person that comes out over, the southern border, the Trump and the Republicans, they want you to think that every person like that is MS-13. I think in the other example I meant to say Hamas there. I apologize. But it's just this kind of painting them all with this kind of broader, worst possible brush, ignoring the actual history of how MS-13 and how gangs came up, and it's largely, tied to U.S., horrific crimes and U.S. interference in the region, and also just trying to paint these people as MS-13 so they could paint them as animals, and then you could take them out of, society. You can take them out of people's minds as humans worthy of support, and instead make them people you just kind of just forget about. It's not really a big deal. Trump went on to say that these unnamed countries, presumably in Latin America, were emptying their prisons and driving all the convicts to the Mexico border with the United States, which is just like completely made up. Similarly, Trump's insinuation that asylum seekers, if I even need to say it, Trump's insinuation that asylum seekers and undocumented immigrants are more likely to be violent criminals than native-born Americans isn't based in any kind of statistical evidence. In fact, what evidence there is shows the opposite. Of course, Trump lies all the time, both important subjects and trivial ones. But Trump makes things up is hardly breaking news. What's generally alarming here is that Trump is saying some of the migrants coming to America's borders are not people, but actually animals. And again, Ben Burgess, who is writing this piece for Jacobin, I apologize, I didn't say that before, he goes and makes the Israel comparison as well. Similarly, few of Trump's apologists who have bothered to defend the animals part of the Ohio speech have half-heartedly suggested that he was only calling the mythical truckloads of MS-13 members being freed from prisons and driven to the Mexican border as not people, but the connection between writing part of a group out of a human race and justifying atrocities against the group as a whole is painfully clear, especially when the dehumanizing rhetoric comes with a strong suggestion that we have no way of knowing which members of the group are regular humans and which are animals not deserving of the protections we extend to members of our species. The available statistics from the DHS and their total number of encounters, which is the DHS's term for arrests with migrants, was far greater during the Biden years in office than during Trump's first 2 years, and that a greater percentage of those encounters were deported under Biden. Immigration hawks point out that many people are allowed to stay in the United States, for years while their asylum cases are being processed, but even there, the right's portrayal of Biden as a border dub is out of step with the reality of his record. He championed the bipartisan border bill that would have shredded asylum seekers' due process rights in order to more rapidly evict them from the country. Which, by the way, I think the fact that we see no real defense of this, we see no real outrage of this, and we say, it's a threat to democracy. It's not about migrants. I think it shows that Biden doesn't care at all. He probably cares just as much about the migrant issue than Trump. Probably cares less about it because Trump cares about it because he can use it to demonize him for politics. Biden just doesn't care because he's like, you know what? The Latinos in Texas have turned against me. Latinos in Florida have turned against me. Latinos in California, they're not very, he's just written them off, which is just absolutely horrific because, again, I think it's also a little bit of a mistake to assume that people living in the country, care especially people living in the country of Latino descent care a special amount about people coming across the border. I think they're just looking out for, number one, first and foremost, and don't care, especially more than anyone else. But, this is a genuine, really absolute crisis of humanity if you have somebody who is coming out and saying these comments and doing these things. He is setting the stage for a very, very drastic situation, especially after what happened in Israel. I think it is very, very stupid to ignore this stuff. In January, Texas's right-wing governor Greg Abbott dropped a hint about what Trump actually may want to do to migrants. He told the interviewer, "The only thing we're not doing is we're not shooting these people who come across the border because, of course, the Biden administration would charge us with murder." From his words alone, we can't be certain what Trump would do to immigrants if he gets a second term. In his first term, after all, he failed to deliver on many things, both good and bad, that he promised to do in 2016. But his apocalyptic rhetoric about hordes of not quite human foreigners invading the country and bringing death and destruction to native-born Americans raises an obvious and disturbing question. What is Trump giving himself permission to do? It really is a kind of a bone-chilling thought to end a great piece there by Ben Burgess. But, it's also, I think it's worth asking, what is Joe Biden, what is the Democratic Party doing to stand up against this? They are not only just saying nothing, but, Al Sharpton is out there on MSNBC in the peak, Democratic exalted media chamber in one of the most exalted figures in Democratic politics, in Al Sharpton, coming out and calling migrants an invasion as well, saying this is a big threat that's being used against black mayors. It's like, how far gone are we on this issue that we have two parties that are, just one is leading the way, one is getting, slowly dragged behind in what could be, in a few years, setting the stage for an absolute deep crime, against humanity. And not that, the situation the migrants have been under on our southern border hasn't been a crime against humanity for a long time, but boy, oh boy, it could certainly get worse. And on that note, that's all we got for you today. We'll be back on Wednesday. It's Newsflash.